we are talking about adaptations, okay? So it's not uncommon to hear someone say something like, there's no original content these days, or everything's derivative of something else. And these complaints are valid, honestly. Top grossing video games, movies, TV shows, they're typically based off content made famous in other mediums. From superhero content like the new Avengers game, everything in DC fandom, Luke Cage, to non-super cult classics like Scott Pilgrim, American Gods, even the Witcher games. Tons of quality content is derived from somewhere else. 10 times, this somewhere else is usually a kick-ass written work, which categorizes them as adaptations. Now, not all adaptations are created equal. Green Lantern, every Fantastic Four movie. Sorry, it's stuck in my throat. It's probably a shitty movie. But we wanted to break this down a bit, so let's do that tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about a few things: what makes a good adaptation, what kills them, and why they are so damn successful. First off, we need to define what we're talking about when we say adaptations, okay? An adaptation is defined as a movie, a television drama, a video game, stage play, or really any storytelling medium that has been adapted from a written work, typically a novel. Tons of iconic pieces of pop culture fall into this category, including some that may surprise you, such as The Mask and even the BioShock series. Throughout the years, adapting written works into other storytelling mediums has increased exponentially. Any guesses as to why, Jake?
I mean, I would say it's with the advancements in technology, we can actually build some of these amazing worlds that are told throughout, written word for the most part, or through drawings, you know what I mean? It's written works becoming the medium for a lot of these stories. It makes sense because that's the heart of storytelling, if you will. If it's not someone yelling or preaching from some giant rooftop or whatever, telling you something like some kind of slam poetry or whatever. Written storytelling's like the next closest, or the kind of like the next step. It's like you say it, you write it, then it becomes something. That's kind of like the process. So
yeah. As what would you? I mean, do you have any thoughts on to why this has increased exponentially, Bronwyn?
So yeah, I mean, I think that we all crave that exciting, just stimulating. Like everyone wants stimulation, be entertained. So it makes sense that we are reading less and watching more, and because of that, they're making that written word into something we can watch.
Yeah, I mean, written word into something we can consume in different forms too. I mean, we listed stuff like BioShock and The Witcher,
exactly.
Even video
as well. Stuff that we even play, and stuff that I feel like when you think of The Witcher now, when you realize that it's a written work too, and now that it's been a Netflix adaptation, it's on 3 different mediums, and you kind of decide which medium is the most powerful there in those moments, in my opinion. So I think that a lot of stuff, it's that the written work leaves so much theater of the mind that it kind of, because it has that room for exploration, that's why it's transitioned over into other mediums. That's why it transitions over into TV shows. It's why it's transitioned over into video games. So that's kind of, I guess, how I would sum up the kind of exponential increase we've seen in written adaptations. But
it's been insane too. Some of the greatest stories have been told through video games lately,
right?
And for a while now, a lot of great stories have been told, but some pretty fucking awesome ones have been told over the past couple years. And like you said, The Witcher starting out as a written work, in a way, even like God of War is an adaptation of mythological storytelling, from back in the day. And so it's like, it's
definitely
awesome.
Derivative.
Exactly. Right. And so it's, I think video games to me are the future of storytelling. I think we're always going to have movies. I think for so long, we've had the debate of, there was always, I think even you could go as far back as The Wizard of Oz. There was, The Wizard of Oz was one of the first, early movies. After it came out, you had people that were like, dude, that movie was fucking dope. I mean, they probably said it exactly like that, And then you had people that said, well, the book was better. You know what I mean? We've always had that. And so it's been like that for years. And so it's interesting to see, even now we have video games kind of creeping in there as another one that people are like, the books was better. And someone's like, well, no, I thought the video game was better. And it's like, no, the Netflix series was better.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree, and I think that it leaves that interpretation up to which medium do you find it the best? Which one do you think The Witcher truly exists the strongest in this circumstance? Is that the video games? Is that the TV series, or is that the original content that it came from originally?
Or does it have to be stronger? Like,
yeah,
you can't, yeah.
or
you just enjoy them. Like
sorry,
indulge. Oh, sorry. Or just like indulge in them in different ways to scratch certain itches, but they don't have to necessarily. I feel like we get so caught up because that's like you said, what people immediately do when they see a movie that used to be a book. They're like, oh, well, the book is better. Why do we have to compare them or compete with each other? Because I think that you're getting something different out of it. So just putting them in different places in your mind.
But we're comparing creatures, you know. We have to compare things. We gotta see. I mean,
peace, love.
Even the next question that I have on here is how do we define a quality adaptation? What makes a good adaptation? Like how do we when we have these comparisons out there, you know, what do we there are bad adaptations. We know that, and there are good adaptations of the source material. What defines those, Bronwyn?
Yeah, so I think that there definitely is still good and bad, but I think that so I think there may be two major schools of thought on this. One is keeping something so close to the original source material that it's almost like page by page exactly accurate, or there are adaptations that just are a lot looser, or maybe twist and build onto something. And I think there are benefits on both sides, but I almost prefer when it does something a little bit different so that you can hold those two pieces of material completely separate in your mind as to what they are. And it also shows the creativity of the person doing the adaptation. If they aren't just reproducing something in its entirety, they're saying, wow, this really made me, I focused on this aspect of the book that made me think of this. So now I want to go down this road and point out this experience, this thought method or process or whatever. But yeah, so I think that makes a good adaptation, something that's willing to push the boundaries a bit and to blur the lines and to show something new based on what already existed.
Yeah.
How about you, Jake? What do you think makes a good adaptation?
No, I agree with a lot of the things that you said. And so it's just one of those where, like, I think, you know, a great adaptation is when they can take a familiar story and add on to it, right? Like we had kind of, you know, mentioned that with, like I said, even God of War, you know, like the original, like those characters were phenomenal. Somebody in chat said Stephen King movies are hard to watch because his books are so descriptive, right? And so it's one of those where, like, the book is super descriptive, but even I think the films are still a great adaptation of those works because they're super visual, right? Especially the newer ones, right? They really nailed the visual aspect of it. I mean, it's still got a little iffy here and there, and some fans are still a little mad about it, but you know, some fans really did enjoy it, and I was one of those. So I thought it was a pretty decent adaptation. Unfortunately, I'm not a big reader. I wish I was. I read comics, things like that, but it's something about an actual novel. Like, dude, it's got to have pictures for.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, but some great graphic novel adaptations have been out there as well. And I think that, when you really take a look at the source material and you try to bring the spirit of that to, I'm thinking particularly in movies right now, when you try to bring the spirit of that to a film, that's a really key thing. I think that, there's a different tone with Sin City that there is with Scott Pilgrim, what there is with Walking Dead, what there is with, a whole bunch of these really good comic book adaptations out there, and they all try to take from that source and try to paint the narrative that they're putting in that source material. And I think that how true you are to that is really important. And I think that comes with the right director and the right art direction, as well as it does the right storytelling. Like, you have to be true to the source material, not just in the storytelling, especially with graphic novels. You have to be also true to the aesthetic of the novel.
100%.
So
I think there's a level of respect there too. I think that honoring a source material is really important. If you're going to go against what it's saying completely, like that's not respecting the original author at all.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's what's so interesting about things like even some of the more recent comic book adaptations, right? Like, so like Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's director had never read a Wonder Woman comic. She straight up admitted it, that she was just not a comic reader.
What?
And so it was really interesting to see her like come in and she still created probably the best DC movie we've had. You know what I mean? It's interesting. It's interesting how someone can come in and just like, but she said it's because after she got the nod to direct Wonder Woman, she decided like, I'm gonna go read some comics, like really get into it and everything. And so she respected the source material.
Okay,
you know
good.
What I mean?
I thought you meant like she didn't read it at all. Like she didn't do any like research. Like,
oh yeah, no, she definitely did. Like, but it was one of those where when she got the nod, she wasn't a comic book junkie. This wasn't like if we had let Kevin Smith direct Batman. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, you talked a lot about a lot of the prevalence of comic book adaptations out there. I mean, we see them all the time now, and we see them from novels, from all different kinds of source material, and a lot of this is coming from written works to more visual, more active mediums that leave much less to the imagination, actually. Do you think the prevalence of these adaptations is kind of stifling the creation of original content in any way? Jake, do you think so?
I mean, so as I don't. It's a hard question because I do think that like sometimes nostalgia. Yeah, nostalgia and like, you know, cash grabs, capitalism, things like that, right? Those stifle creativity in my idea, right? I don't think adaptations are stifling anybody's creativity. I think like because I think a lot of the ones, and even some of the ones that we'll mention in our list later, you know, our top Zen, and even some of the ones that we've just talked about here in this conversation, you know, are great adaptations. And so it's one of those where like we can enjoy the book and the movie and the show and the video game. You can enjoy all of them in different kind of, it's all different mediums that you're going to be taking it in, right? And so it just kind of really is like pick your poison in a way. But the poison's really fun activities to have for hours. And so, you know, it's one of those where I do not think adaptations really stifle creativity. And I don't think, they really, but it depends on how crazy you get from the original content. You know, that's another thing too. But what do you feel about it, Bron?
So I think that there's a ton of original content right now and a ton of original material, but it's not really at the forefront of our culture, like of popular culture. Okay. I think that if any of us went into a bookstore tomorrow and just walked around, you would see so many new stories because there's constantly authors coming out with new things, pushing the boundaries, and it just like isn't always seen, which is pretty sad. And I'll admit I don't read as much as I should. And a lot of times I just immediately go to like the classics. I'm not supporting newer authors. Supporting newer authors as much as I should be. But I know there's a ton of stuff happening and new books being published. And that's amazing. Even if it's not kind of on the radar per se. Yeah. And
what is new? You know, like that's a good question. Like, because like, you know, every year we get, you know, we're like, every year there's more and more shit coming out. Right. And so it's one of those things where like everything, you know, like, you know, eventually everything's paying homage to something, you know, in a way. Right. Like it may not be a direct adaptation. It may not be a direct ripoff or anything like that. But like, you know, part of creativity is taking like, oh, shit, that's a really cool thing that guy did. What could I do with that?
Yeah, it's like that saying, like, every story's been told, it's how you tell it.
Yeah, right. You know, and like we had talked about, I mean, we wouldn't have Umbrella Academy if we didn't have Doom Patrol, right? But like Doom Patrol's great, and Umbrella Academy's great, and we wouldn't have either one of those if not for X-Men, which is also amazing. And we wouldn't have X-Men if not for the Civil Rights Act, you know. So like,
I mean, it's a lot of It's very interesting your point, Brahman. I think with like there is tons of original content out there. It just doesn't get the limelight, and it beckons to like the fact that we do go to content that we're familiar with. We do go to content that we've invested a lot of time with. You know, I've invested a lot of time with Doctor Who, so when I see a TARDIS, I jump back into that 12-year investment that I've had in not 12 years, it's probably like 8 years investment of Doctor Who. But Pokemon, like God forbid, that is like near probably 20 years of investment.
Yeah.
You know, that you jump right into, and that's why those things are so emotionally you just cling to. And so I think that there could be an argument that the prevalence of it does kind of stifle the exposure for original content. But that doesn't mean that, you know, original content can't exist or can't shine. It just has to really, really be good. It has to outshine Dune. So make sure you have good representation. You know? We talked about reboots and remakes a few weeks back. Are adaptations the same kind of thing? Brahman, why or why not? Adaptations, same thing as reboots?
Ooh, this is exciting because I wasn't here for the reboot conversation, so it's nice to be able to jump into it. Exactly. I think that they are different. I do. I think that reboot is just more redoing something, whereas an adaptation is kind of like building off of something, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I do think that there is a differentiation.
You're transitioning it to a completely different media. Like I was saying earlier, it's taking it from the theater of the mind to the theater that you buy popcorn at, you know?
Whereas like Men in Black versus Men in Black International, like I feel like that's like a reboot.
Exactly. Yeah.
But Men in Black is an adaptation, which we'll get into later. So that's just many layers deep.
So many layers, yeah.
But Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's funny that you use Men in Black as the example because, like you said, it's Men in Black is an adaptation that is also has a reboot, right? And so, and I think there are maybe a few other examples of those that are out there. I wouldn't be surprised of it because of, like I said, those things earlier. Capitalism needs that money, baby. You know, like we got to keep getting the reboots out. We got to get adaptations out. We got to get different things out so that people can buy it, right? That's kind of part of it. We need options so people can buy them, and so it's kind of it's one of those where, though, I do believe that a reboot is a completely different thing than an adaptation. I think we all agree there. It's just, but reboots can be adaptations. Adaptations can have reboots. So it's a pretty funny little circle that we kind of got going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, a reboot is more of a regurgitation of an old thing. Like you're taking a series and like Jurassic Park and then going to Jurassic World. Even in those senses of trying to create that universe, but you're kind of really taking an existing medium and transitioning it into the future in the existing medium that it already was. And I think that adaptations, usually the big difference is it's taking it from a source material and translating it to a very new media. And that is a step for it. You know, when Sin City went from the comic book to the movie, you know, how that looks was, you know, very, very unique. And I think it was, you know, one of my personal favorites. But, you know, with that said, every media has its unique challenges when you're transitioning to new media, of course. Even in games that are after movies, traditionally, usually kind of fucking suck because so much of their story relies on what happens in the movie. You know, and so they have the writers kind of have to build around that, and they just kind of build gameplay around an already kind of chopped up story that's, you know, mostly cinematic and, you know, blah. But anyways, are there any similar challenges in writing adaptations, Jake?
I mean, I think there's just a lot of challenges, right? And it's for a lot of the things that we mentioned, you know, like people, especially if it's an adaptation of something else, you know, folks are going to be like, I liked the book more. I liked the graphic novel more. They didn't do this right. They didn't do that right. And I think for video games, that's especially hard because sometimes, especially if the video game doesn't have source material, like a Halo, for instance, you know, the people are so infectious, you know, they're
actually
so in
wrong
love.
About that one. I think Halo does have a written novel.
Oh, that came out before Halo? Like the actual game, though? I'm pretty sure it was a game, then it had written novels, TV shows, stuff like that. I may have to research it. Because it's one of those where, like, but anyway, long story short, I think, like, there's definitely, you know, a lot of issues that come from, you know, like Doom is another one that, tell me what, did Doom? Or am I 0 for 2?
Dune? No, I don't know of Dune. I'm not quite sure
Doom.
about
Doom.
I don't know about
fucking
Doom.
killing demons, you know, Doom.
It
was the old school computer game.
Video game.
Yeah. There you go. That's another one that, like, everybody loves Doom. They love Doom Guy. You know, they love him blasting demons, but yet we haven't got a good Doom movie. And it's because like that's such a hard thing to take from like this awesome action-packed video game and kind of like put it into a cinematic universe for someone to digest. I think Sonic did an okay job at it recently. It really wasn't that terrible. I'm gonna say it. But then like in the past, we've gotten shit like the Mario Brothers, which I'm gonna be a little against the grain here. Not the worst movie ever made. Come on, I'll watch it.
You're pretty against the grain on that one, man. That was an atrocity.
It's because it's like Jar Jar Binks. It came out when I was a child, and so I have like fun memories of it. Like going back as an adult and watching Jar Jar, you're like, what the fuck is this train wreck? But then as a kid, you were like, Misa love a Jar Jar.
Oh my god.
But what about you, Bronwyn?
Leave that part out.
So I'm gonna go the other way, and I'm gonna go from the game to the movie. So from the movie to the game.
Yeah.
Reverse myself. So I think that can get a little muddled too with that sort of adaptation. If they like stick too much to the movie and they try to do like a scene by scene sort of like I have to stick to this. One game I think did a really good job of it though was the Mad Max. And I remember we talked about this back on the show in college. And I think that's amazing because it just throws you into the universe and you can be at it at any point in time and you just get to experience it, but it's not a part of the movie. It's just in that world. And I think that is where you can find the success. You don't need to remake the movie. They saw the movie, do something different, have them be able to explore this awesome world and the rules and the world building within that. So I think that's really where those adaptations can flourish, and especially within a game, because it is hard. You don't want to just be rewatching the game interactive version.
Yeah. Do you think there's any similar challenges for the written adaptations to do that same thing?
The written adaptations within the games to just go from like the written work to the
like, for example, like BioShock and Witcher and stuff like that. Do they have the similar challenges that you're talking about, like from a video games to a movies? That's more or less what I was asking.
Okay. Oh yeah. So no, I can agree with that. I think that maybe people might be less familiar in the sense of like The Witcher, because wasn't that a really like an older book or no?
Yeah, it was a pretty dense one too.
Yeah. So maybe people didn't have the experience of reading it, but I do think that it can be the same thing, as in maybe don't throw these characters into the exact same situations, but take the world, take the mythology, take the art, the descriptions, bring those to life instead of maybe making a script that is just pulled directly from the source material.
I can't imagine what it would be like to try to animate something that you've read and like take it from like that theater of the mind kind of thing that we were talking about earlier and actually like physically making it. But I mean, honestly, that might be even easier than adapting it to a movie, because then you can at least mold that world, right? You can shape that world any way you want to. Is at least how I would think about it from that aspect. But adaptations can really be made from any kind of written form or piece. It could be a play, it could be a hardback novel, it could be a comic book, it could be a graphic novel. But what kind of literature would you say is kind of the best for adaptations? Bronwyn.
Oh wow, the best for adaptation.
Yeah, like with the best, like the best. Like, do plays adapt better to more medias? Do novels adapt better to more medias? Like, what written form do you think is the best? Like, gets the best adaptations from? I feel like there's a clear answer here.
Oh my! I don't see the clear answer. Wow. So, I think maybe the most obvious that I'm thinking is like something like a play, because you literally have that scripted out already. But is this a trick question?
No, it's not.
I can't. I don't
know. Like, if you say plays, then it's plays.
I don't know. I feel like they all have their own challenges. Yeah, maybe. What do you think, Jake? I don't know. I'm stumped.
So I know Dotson's answer is graphic novels. I think Dotson's looking for graphic novels being the easiest one, But I'm gonna go against it here, and I'm gonna just say novels in general. Like, I really think books just are always gonna be the best beginning of like the it's just that's the best. Like, almost the best vessel for storytelling in a way, in its beginning phases. And then a book can become a movie, it can become a video game, it can become, so many other things. And so it's just one of those, a play even. We've seen
There's a lot
things
more
like,
left up in the
So
air.
much Shakespeare has been
we've seen
adapted.
things like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein has went from Frankenstein to a billion other Frankenstein movies, to as far as us even having Van Helsing video games, and as far as us even having Young Frankenstein on Broadway. And so it's just one of those where like, and so it's where I feel like novels in general are the backbone of adaptations,